guys, my name's Ashley. Thank you for checking out my channel. If you're brand new here, I do a lot of DIY with my husband and renovation stuff. We are in the middle of a bathroom renovation. We've been working on it for quite a while. We actually have been filming our process, the good and the bad and the ugly. And we've already done part 1, which is where we've restained our cabinets, which turned out gorgeous. Part 2 was demo, so we demoed the bathroom tub surrounding area. We replumbed and we got it ready for tiling. And today is part 3, and this is where we waterproofed everything. I'm going to show you how we did that, and I'm going to walk you through how we tiled the area. And boy, it turned out really good. If you want to watch the older videos, I'll link them below. We were also renovating our camper, which I have a series on that as well. Anyway, without further ado, let's jump right in.
So there are many different ways that you can waterproof a shower, but we decided to go with a waterproofing membrane. And the reason why we went with a waterproofing membrane is, first of all, I thought it would be easier than having to paint on like Red Guard. If you choose a waterproofing membrane that is paintable, you're going to have to paint on multiple layers, and a lot of times it's going to have such a strong smell that it's going to give you a headache. So instead, we chose to do a roll-on waterproofing membrane by a German brand called Schluter. Now, I really like Schluter because they have top quality products, they have free online classes, you can even go in person and take classes. But the other reason why I like them is if you use all of their products on your shower, you will get a 10-year warranty. Now, I knew I was going to waterproof this thing really well, plus we're going to be selling the house, so I actually didn't go with their thin set, so that negated the warranty I would have gotten. Probably in hindsight, I would have preferred to use their thin set and get that warranty. However, the reason why I chose an off-brand thin set was to save a little bit of money, since the Schluter brand was quite a bit more expensive at the time. Now, in order to adhere the Kerdi membrane to the wall long term, you definitely want to use a non-modified cement. Basically, that's just regular cement that doesn't have any glue added to it. If you end up getting the modified version, it will cause the Kerdi membrane to not adhere properly long term. And like I mentioned, if you go with the Schluter brand, you are not going to have any problems getting a warranty. Now, when you're mixing your cement, you want to mix it a little bit thinner than you would if you were applying tile. I think I might have mixed mine a little bit too thin because every time I lifted my trowel, it would just drip all over the place. It was extremely messy, so in hindsight, I would probably go not watery like I did it, maybe just a tad bit thicker. And if you really want to see how to do this properly, I advise going to the Schluter website and watching the tutorials that they have online. Now, on Amazon, they have the Kerdi membrane and they also have Kerdi band. You'll probably want to get both. Kerdi band is a little bit thinner and it's used for detail areas like corners and edges and things like that. And they made it half as thin as the Kerdi membrane so you don't have too much overlap. When using the Kerdi, you want to overlap every edge by at least 2 inches. Or you can put the seams together and use the Kerdi tape or Kerdi band to cover it. You'll still want to make sure there's a 2-inch overlap on both sides of the seam. Now, before we ever installed any of the Kerdi membrane, we looked at everything, measured everything out, and tried to plan our pieces and have everything cut out so that there would be minimal overlap. The only thing that made this complicated was the niche. Having to measure and cut around that made it quite difficult because there was a lot of seams no matter which way you laid the Kerdi membrane. I still found it useful though that we pre-cut all of our pieces, pre-measured everything, and I wrote on a Sharpie marker which side goes up, where it went. That way when it came to installing, I just brought everything in from the living room and my husband helped me install it. So the reason why this was a bit difficult for me is that, first of all, it was really messy and it dripped everywhere. It was kind of hard to control. And unlike tile where you're doing just a little section at a time, you're doing a large area all at once. And to be honest, I don't think I applied enough cement to the wall because by the time I got to where I was unrolling the Kerdi membrane to apply it, it was kind of drying on me and I was having a hard time getting it adhered to the wall like I wanted it to. So the next time I apply Kerdi membrane, I'm going to put a little bit more cement on the wall, maybe make it a tad bit thicker, and when I roll on the Kerdi membrane, I'm just going to push out any excess cement with the flat side of my trowel. That way I make sure that it adheres really well to the wall. We also wanted to make sure that the waterproofing in the tile on the right side was even and stopped at a straight even line, so we took a laser level and marked it and then we taped it off. So this is basically what it looked like after we installed the Kerdi membrane. And the only thing we had to waterproof now was just around the faucet pipes. So Schluter makes these little pre-made pipe seals that you can install around your pipes. You just want to make sure that you get the right size for the job. You want to put your cement on and then press out all the excess cement. And I also like that they have a little bit of rubber in the middle, keeping it a little bit more waterproofed and secure. After we installed all 3 pipe seals, everything was waterproofed and ready to go. We then turned our attention to cleaning off the countertops, organizing the garage, setting up our tile saw, and getting everything ready to start tiling the shower. Now while we were organizing and setting everything up to tile, our kids helped out by playing in the rain. Now since I'm going to be adding Schluter Ditra and tiling the floor, and I'm not sure how high the floor is going to be once I'm all done with that, I didn't want to tile from the floor up, so I decided to install these little boards on both sides, and that would be my starting point for the tile. And that way, once I'm done tiling the floor, I can cut a piece of tile to finish off the shower that's the exact and appropriate height. So the first thing we did is we kind of lined everything up to see what kind of pattern I wanted to start off with and make sure that there would be no tiny pieces that I would have to cut on either end. And then I lined up all the pieces, held it up with tape, and used my laser level to see the low spots, and I marked all of the low spots so that I could trim that off. But because I don't want my cuts to be at the top of the tile, I transfer them down to the bottom of the tile, and then I have Matthew trim it off with the tile saw, and that way your cuts are at the bottom and less noticeable. We also make sure to mark each tile in the order that we had it laid out, that way we can install it back in the correct order. Now because we took the time to trim the tiles and install them properly, the first row would be completely level, and that way everything that we installed on top of it would be starting from a level base, because the tub itself is not level. Now you only have to use real cement when you're installing the Kerdi membrane, but once you get that installed, you can switch over to regular thin set or a modified cement when you are installing your tiles. So I switched back over to the Schluter All Set, which works really well. It was a little bit pricey, but I really liked the consistency and texture of it, and it seemed to hold my tiles in really well. Now real quick, I want to note that when you're laying your first row of tiles, you want to make sure that you have enough space for expansion and contraction. I think they suggest like a 1/8 of an inch. So I already had some tile spacers from my last tile job, so I just reused those. I do wish they were a little bit longer, but they worked pretty decently. Another important detail that you don't want to miss when you're tiling is to make sure you have the correct trowel for the tile that you're using. Since I'm using a little bit of a smaller tile, I used a small V-notch trowel, but if I was using a large format tile, I would need a bigger trowel with bigger notches in it. If you're unsure of what type of trowel to use for the tile that you picked out, you can ask somebody at Floor & Decor, or you can join this group called Tile Chicks. It's on Facebook. I really like this group. I've gotten a lot of help, and I've made a lot of awesome tile friends there. So when I began tiling my niche, I completely did it wrong. When I first started installing my mosaic tile, I thought, oh look, it fits perfectly. And it didn't dawn on me in the moment that we were going to have to cut out all these little tiny triangle pieces that weren't only going to be difficult to cut out, but they were also going to be extremely difficult to install properly. Instead, what we should have done is taken the bottom row of tiles and cut it completely in half. That way the bottom would have started with a nice clean line, and the top would have also had bigger pieces without having to cut little tiny triangles and giving us a little more leverage to work with. Now we still managed to get it installed and it started to look really nice. Then we began installing the bottom part, and when we got to the little triangle pieces, I had to make sure that we pushed them down far enough because we didn't want them sticking up and cause water to pool or collect behind the niche. We wanted all the water to be able to run down, that way our niche stays as dry as possible. So by far the biggest issue we had was this stupid niche. If I could have done it all over again, I wouldn't have had my cousin make it. I would have went and bought a pre-made one. First of all, a pre-made one is going to have a perfect angled slope, it's going to be completely square, and it's going to be waterproof. That alone is going to save you a lot of time. Another thing that I had a lot of trouble with was the Schluter Quadec trim. This is the piece that frames out your niche and makes it look a little more finished, a little more professional. I had a ton of issues installing this. Again, it was probably due to my walls being janky, nothing being perfectly straight or flat, and also my inexperience. So they have these little square end pieces. They're like little decorative end pieces that are supposed to finish out the total look that you insert into your quad deck framing. In order to install them, you're supposed to put a little thin set around them and then plop them in. I couldn't get them to fit. They just kept falling out. They weren't very snug at all, and I wish they could have just clipped in or connected in, but they just kept falling out, and I never could get them to look straight or look right. Overall, I just was not impressed with the look at all. So for my next bathroom project, I'm going to buy a pre-made niche, and I'm going to only tile the back part. The top, bottom, and the sides of the niche, I'm just going to use one big piece of granite or one big piece of tile, and I'll be skipping the quad deck trimming completely. Another small issue we had with the quad deck is when I went to line up the side piece, I realized the bottom piece was too long. So I had to have my husband remove a little piece from the bottom with the Dremel.
Don't record me. Nothing ever goes right when you record me.
So skipping back to the part where we installed the first row of tiles. So like I mentioned earlier, the walls were not straight, they were a little bit janky, so there were times when I had to install more thin set behind certain tiles in order to make them appear more flush with the other tiles on the wall. The one thing you don't want to have when you're tiling is lippage, and lippage is where you run your fingers across and one tile sticks out more than the other. So I tried my best to put more thin set in areas to keep all the tiles as even as I possibly could. It wasn't perfect, but I got as close as I could.
So cutting this piece around the shower was quite a bit difficult for my husband. He ended up having to cut like 5 pieces before he got it right. And that just kind of sums up tiling when you think about it, because you'll be going along, everything will be going great, everything will be going smoothly, then there'll be this weird piece you have to cut and you'll be burning through all your good tiles trying to get it cut right, and that's just part of it.
I continued to use my laser level, checking that both sides of the tile were straight and even every time I did a row.
Now, even though in the end my tile job looked really nice, there were a lot of mistakes I made. Like one of them was I didn't get all the pieces lined up close enough to the wall. Some pieces I felt like were too close to the wall. You know, my walls weren't perfectly straight, and that kind of posed a problem. So I framed out my tile shower with tiles, and for the corner pieces I wanted to do these nice miter cuts. So here you see us measuring to do a miter cut. The first one we got right away, but on the second one it took us a couple of cuts before we got it right. And I really felt like the miter cut gave it a nice professional look. Now, because we had some gapping in our corners, I was going to grout everything with a bright white grout, but I felt like that would highlight our mistakes. So we opted to go with a darker grout and silicone color, and I got a matching silicone and grout by a brand called Mapei, and we chose this color called Pearl Gray, and we were really happy with it. I really like the look. And isn't this how every project goes? I got to the last 2 rows of tile and ran out, so we had to actually go and purchase another box from Floor & Decor. But we needed to run up there anyway because I had to buy the new silicone and grout color that we had picked out. So the very last thing that we needed to finish tiling was the niche, and the reason why I hadn't finished tiling it in the first place is because I couldn't decide how I wanted to do the sides and the top part of the niche. We ultimately decided just to continue the white tile on the sides. And yes, it was a pain in the butt. I had to cut out more triangles, so like I said, next time we do a niche, we're just doing a solid piece on each side. Once we finally finished tiling everything, I wiped everything down, we got everything cleaned up, cleaned the tub out. Then my husband mixed up the Pearl Gray grout from Mapei, and we didn't do the whole bag, we just did sections at a time. That way it didn't dry on me before I could go to the next section. And yes, you can see here I upgraded my little spatula that I used for grouting my kitchen to this nice little handy float.
So I stuck with sections at a time. I would work in the grout as much as I could, and then I would come back in with a nice wet sponge and I would clean off the bulk of it, and I would also wipe down the grout and try to form it into the cracks the best that I could. Now you don't want to push your sponge so hard that it wipes out the grout. It's kind of a fine balance between getting it in the cracks and keeping it from coming out. You also don't want to wipe too soon because it'll be too wet and it will pull out the grout, but if you wait too long and it's really dry, it's going to be a lot harder to wipe off. So you're looking for a fine balance between it all, and the more you do it, the better you're going to get at this. The reason why this takes a little bit of time is you have to constantly wash your sponge out because it gets dirty really fast. And to save time, my husband would run to the kitchen and really give it a good rinse. So if you have a partner willing to help you, it will definitely help the process go a little faster. Now the sponge is going to help shape the grout into the cracks, but it's not going to get off this, what they call a grout haze off of your tiles. With that, you want to come back in with a nice microfiber rag, and that's going to help get off all of this grout haze. I would suggest using 1 or 2 microfiber rags that are going to get really dirty and really gross looking, and you're just going to keep rinsing them out and wiping the haze off, and then you're going to come in with a fresh new microfiber rag and a nice window cleaner and really clean everything up. And to keep from hurting your back from bending over constantly, I suggest putting your grout or your thin set bucket on a stool next to you and keep a lid on it. That way your thin set or your grout doesn't dry out too fast. So after you finish grouting everything and you've let everything dry, you're going to come back in the next day or so and look for what I call pinholes. And this is just where the grout has shrank a little bit, or little areas you may have missed that you didn't see when you were grouting. And what we did is we went and marked everything with tape. We looked for all the little holes. Then we came back through and did some touch-ups. I think I did touch-ups 2 or 3 times before it was all said and done. Next, we decided to go ahead and silicone the bottom part of the tub and all the corners with this beautiful Mapei Pearl Gray. And what I really liked about the silicone is once it dried, you couldn't tell the difference between the grout or the silicone, so it all matched up really nicely. It also went on really smooth. It was easy to clean off compared to the silicone that I used in the kitchen, which was a nightmare. With this Mapei silicone, you could clean it up if you got it on the corners or you got it on the tile. It was easy to clean up. And to spread the silicone on evenly, I used this awesome little silicone applicator that I got off of Amazon for like 10 bucks. I'll place a link in the description below if you'd like to grab one of your own. I've used it in the kitchen, the camper, and now this bathroom. Now just like the grout, the silicone also shrank up and there were some pinholes that I had to fill for a second time. And we ran out of silicone, so we had to go pick up another tube. So if you're going to do a shower area, I recommend at least getting 2 tubes of silicone in case you run out. Once we finished grouting the blue tiles, we hadn't done the niche yet, but we finished everything else. I had my husband go ahead and seal off the grout with this tile, stone, and grout sealer. He just put a little in a cup and painted on with the foam brush. It was pretty simple. After the sealer dried, we began installing the faucets, and we chose these Delta faucets in a champagne bronze color. I really thought the color contrasted beautifully against these dark blue tiles. Then I finally got around to grouting my niche, and I decided to go with the white grout in order to contrast against the blue. I then taped off the edges around the shower tile, and I used the same white unsanded grout by Mapei to go over the edges of the tile, making them nice, crisp, and white. After it dried a little bit, I gave it a quick sanding and repainted the edge of the wall so everything looked nice and clean. I also added a little bit of painter's caulk to kind of clean up this line from where the cabinet meets the wall, and I felt like that made it look a little bit better. Now it was finally time to install the new drain, but unfortunately the drain that we had ordered that matched the Delta set did not fit. It was too big, and because I'd bought it back in January, it was too late to take it back. So we ordered another one and it didn't fit either. My husband even went to specialty plumbing stores and all around town, and we couldn't find one that was small enough to fit in this hole. I guess because the bathtub was just so old. So we ended up just spray painting the original drain, this kind of bronzy color. It didn't match perfectly, but it did make it look a lot better. And because the drain was actually broke, it didn't have a stopper, we just had to buy a rubber stopper. It wasn't ideal, but it still looks better than what we had before. Once we finally figured out the drain situation, we were ready to wrap this project up. So we went out and bought a brand new shower curtain rod and shower curtain and got that installed. And now, here is the final reveal. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. But we absolutely love it. We think this shower turned out amazing. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed part 3 of our bathroom remodel. I am going to be releasing a part 4 where we epoxy the bathroom countertops. So if you guys want to stay tuned for that, be sure to subscribe, even hit that notification bell, that way you will be updated when I release that video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.